Hello, friends. Welcome back to Reclaim Within. I am Ash. Today's episode, I am claiming as a love letter to your nervous system and as an ode or a prayer to clearing out a lot of misunderstandings. Ooh, good setup, right? My prayer in this episode is quite simple, that you begin to understand how safety is actually not a concept, or to understand safety beyond it just being conceptual. I am inviting us all into actually connecting to what's real. And it is wild how much we are not actually totally connected to what is real, but connected to all of the stories and all of the protection mechanisms that are in the way of actually being in reality. We'll start off like this. Can you feel your feet on the floor? Such a simple question. For such a long time, when I would ask myself that question, I would realize that nope, I have no engagement with the fact that my feet are on the floor right now. My consciousness, my awareness, where I am putting my attention is actually not there. But my feet on the floor, or wherever your feet are, and just attuning to them, that is how you connect with something real. That is actually creating a tangible connection. Another great one is to notice what it feels like to be inside of your clothes right now. And are you aware of how that feels? Or is it something you need to bring your awareness to? This is how we start to get a felt sense, which is going to be really important for this episode. Safety is something that I feel like people talk about or conceptualize, but really it's a lived, felt experience. And without safety, transformation doesn't stick. Transformation is not able to fully form. Healing won't land. And we won't be able to remember the wholeness that is already within us without a felt sense of safety. So there's a lot of misunderstanding around it. And I will be honest, this topic was a really uncomfortable for me to bring forward today. And it's not because I don't believe it's important or I don't want to talk about it, but it's actually because it touches a very tender place within myself. I have visited this concept, this topic, this felt experience so many times in my own process. I have revisited it again and again and again on my own journey of reclaiming within. Safety has actually been one of my biggest hotspots. And as I've come to see how truly misunderstood it is, and how many of us are actually walking through this life thinking we're fine, but deep down, our systems are bracing and we're not actually connected to our felt senses. And not that that's necessarily our fault, but I do feel like as we grow and as we learn to reclaim within, it is our responsibility. So let's break it down. Here's what I know personally to be true. Safety is not an idea. It is a felt experience. And yet, for so many of us, what feels safe is often a false paradigm. It's a false matrix of safety. It's a familiar hell. And so the relationships, environments, and behaviors that we grew up within, even if they were dysregulated, can actually feel to us safer than the unknown softness, connection, felt experience of true nervous system safety. And I have lived this inside of myself. I have walked into so many situations thinking I was grounded, that I knew what this was, only to realize after I looked back that I was actually fawning, or that I was actually disconnecting or fleeing, because the person or the situation or the pattern initially felt actually very familiar. but that's because it felt normal, not actually safe. And so what's difficult is this false safety matrix actually doesn't allow for true healing to take place. Healing actually lives within that unfamiliar heaven. It lives within a container that's able to hold enough felt safety for the false safety matrix to be able to almost like run up or hit up against it so that it can rewire and readjust. It's not always a pretty process from personal experience. All of this requires felt experience. That's such a unique experience that only you can have. Only you can know if you're having a felt sense of real safety. And what's wild is that the false safety matrix will initially feel safer than the actual real container of safety. It is so interesting how complex and nuanced this topic is. So I hope you're hanging with me. In order to actually be able to let go and allow for a pattern to transform, or more of your wholeness to be felt, or a releasing of numbness to happen. And in order to actually allow for that letting go, the body actually needs to be able to feel held enough in that safety container to be able to transform, for the transformation to stick. Safety is actually not something that somebody else can force you to have either. So many times I've done this, we all do this, we'll tell someone, don't worry, you're safe. You're safe. And it's coming from such a good place, yet it dismisses that person's experience that they're having. So saying to someone that you're safe, it's yes, that's reassurance, but it's actually not acknowledging the nervous system experience that they might be having. When we've been told that we're safe in rooms or in relationships where it turned out that we absolutely weren't, that dissonance, that lived experience gets stored. And so then we start to question our own knowing, and we end up quieting the voice inside of us. So many of us have been conditioned systemically, ancestrally, relationally, to actually distrust the signals of our body, of our own feeling senses. And disconnected from our senses, we actually do end up deferring to others, even when something doesn't feel right, because that's what we've learned to do. We've learned to give away our own ability to choose or decipher for ourselves. And this is why safety truly must be felt, not forced. It cannot be faked, it cannot be performed, and it can't be given to somebody. It can only emerge in a space that is a truly trustworthy space. Okay, so on the other side of it, what does it actually mean to then hold a safe space or be a safe space for someone? Here's what I believe. You cannot hold others if you are not also being held. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule, which I will get into later. But for the most part, if you are not being held yourself, held accountable, held responsible, held in containers of your own safety evolution happening, then you cannot then be a holder of others. You cannot actually midwife someone else's transformation if you are not actively tending to your own. And so to me, the people who are trustworthy space holders are the ones who are devoted to their inner work and who are also being lovingly held accountable by others, whether that's elders, teachers, counselors, circles of truth telling. Holding space is not a title you earn from a one weekend workshop. It's not something you crown yourself with after reading one book or doing one training. It just takes time, and it takes lived experience and lots of humility and a willingness to meet your shadows over and over and over again. The image I like to use is this: a person who has learned how to tread water in stormy seas, who can hold themselves without drowning, and then slowly begin to show others how to swim without actually losing themselves in the process, so that they can then help others and pass that on. That's what safe holding looks like. And it takes a lot of experience and time to get to a place where that's possible. It allows for there to be this quiet transmission of presence that allows for someone to be able to come into that person's field of resonance or that field of presence and be reassured, because that person has done enough of their own deep diving that they've been where the other person is before. It's like the greatest game of pass it on ever. All of us, every single one of us, has a front of ourselves and a back of ourselves. And just like you cannot see your own back without a mirror, you also can't see your own blind spots without someone who can reflect them back to you. Hopefully lovingly, but sometimes we just need to get a little smackdown. And this is not weakness. This is actually the opposite of weakness. This is so much strength to be able to be called out for what we cannot see is really important. And that is what I like to call sacred interdependence. It's not completely independent. It's not codependent. It's this beautiful dance of I depend on you so that you can see my back, because I can't see it, and I will do the same for you. One of my teachers, who I believe is now in his 70s, I asked him a question. I asked him, well, who holds you now? Because I was curious. And he said, all of my teachers and all of my elders have now passed away. And I have now stepped into that role, or their role, meaning he doesn't have living teachers or holders anymore. He's in that elder place. He's in that teacher place. But what he said to me was so interesting. He said, my students are the ones who hold me and help me stay supple and curious and growing and young. And it landed so deeply for me, because life is for growing, and growth requires relationships rooted in honesty, presence, and reflection. He's holding so much wisdom now because of all the holding that he's had. He's been held and held and held and held, that now he's got so much to give, so much to teach, so much to wisdom. But what he doesn't have is the beginner's mind. What he doesn't have is that young, supple energy of, what about this? What about that? Right? He's being held now in that way of being almost pushed to stay in that young space so he doesn't get too rigid. And so there's always an evolution happening. And we actually always need one another to keep evolving. And it's actually how we become the elders of our world. That's how we become the teachers of our world, is actually by continually allowing for ourselves to be held and be held accountable and be in exploration for what this felt sense of safety actually feels like for us. It's how we become the trustworthy soil to then be able to pass it on. I want to move back quickly to this felt sense of safety. I have been practicing connecting with what this feels like, what felt safety feels like in my body for a really long time. And I still get caught off guard by the false safety matrix that I didn't know was there. Just this last week, I found another spot where I have been operating under the illusion of safety, but really I was betraying myself through loyalty in a pattern that I had cultivated when I was very, very young to keep me safe, to keep me in belonging. And I speak about this because it's okay for us to be unregulated sometimes. The goal isn't perfection. The goal isn't for a calm nervous system all the time that always feels safe. Not the goal. The goal is for us to have enough of a understanding of what felt safety feels like to us so that we can then be adaptable. So that when something comes up that actually puts us into that hyperarousal state, or when we realize that we've been running a program, for me for the last 30 some years, that has been keeping me in a false safety matrix or like a pseudo safety mechanism, that I have enough of the remembrance of what safety actually does feel like that I can traverse the place where I feel stuck. It's not about being calm all the time. It's about having more of a capacity to hold more. And I think the other important piece of this is that we can't keep ourselves or other people in a bubble. What I mean by that is I witness myself and others want to keep someone protected. Something that I've been saying a lot with my husband lately is no more protecting people. Because really, when I've done that, when I've been overly protective, it's because I just want to keep someone safe. I so badly want to help make sure that they're safe. But in that, I'm actually not recognizing that me trying to do that for them is a projection of my own desire for safety, and that I'm not allowing for them to make the mistakes or do the thing that's going to help them actually learn, that's actually going to help them learn and evolve. Because in this conversation of safety, it's such a long, giant, huge, deep topic. It's going to be hard for me to keep this in that 20-minute mark. Again, safety isn't something that you can give somebody else. It requires presence. It requires tending. The same teacher has told me that trauma is actually an important building block for maturity. The problem is we've forgotten how to integrate. We've lost our capacity to actually be able to hold each other and to be held, to allow yourself to be held and to hold someone else is where we've gotten lost. And so it really is important for us to, especially the holders out there, to be held too, whether that's by peers or teachers or elders, whomever, those of you that are out there holding others, whether that's you're a lash technician or a therapist or a facilitator like myself, it doesn't matter what capacity you're holding someone in, you deserve to be held too. It is important for you to be able to actually offer true safety, for you to actually have that as well. So I'm going to stop talking because I think I could go on this one forever. But I'm going to leave you with these questions. If you are seeking transformation, do you feel safe? Is it a felt sense that you can connect to in your body? And does your body feel held? Or does your psyche feel held? Who do you have? At least two people. That's what I learned from Rochelle Saliga. She says everybody needs two layers of coverage. So who are your two people that hold you? And if you're offering transformation, if you're someone who's being a holder, are you being held in your own growth? And are you willing to see what you cannot see? Are you willing to see your back as well as your front? Because the truth is that we cannot heal in a field that is not cultivating safety consistently. And it is an ongoing process. And we cannot offer safety unless we are walking the path of self-remembrance too. Okay, before I close, I just want to share an offering. I'm 95% sure that I'm going to be opening a 90-minute open circle session each month at the end of the month for all of my paid Substack subscribers. This is going to be a sacred space that's virtual, that we get to gather together, reflect, and explore what's alive inside of us in our own process and in the collective. I would like to be able to weave our own personal integrations together. I want to bring current astrological themes that are happening right now so we can talk about how we're experiencing those in our living experience. And also we can dive into the themes that I've shared each month and bring it into actually a living conversation. So we can actually all talk about, how do you feel safe together in real time? So if that sounds nourishing to you, I invite you to become a paid subscriber if you're not already one on Substack. The first circle I'm going to be holding at the end of August, and I would really love it if you feel called to come and join me there. My prayer is that we each be the kind of humans who remember that healing doesn't happen through force, but it happens through presence. May we each become the safe ground, not because we are going to be perfect, but because we are willing to build a culture that integrates our traumas into wisdom so that we can mature together. And may you feel in your bones that you are worthy of spaces that honor your truth and your felt senses. We are all dancing in this remembering that we are sacred together. I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.